Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. It is Your Brand Amplified with Anika Jackson, and I am here with Michael Marchese of Tempesta Media. And right before we came on, Michael said that he had some really great news that he got this morning, so I'd love for him to share that to tee up our conversation. We also found out that we had some connections. I used to work for an agency when I lived in Chicago called KBA Marketing, and Michael did some work through his agency at the time with KBA. So I love this small world that we're finding in this world of Zoom and podcasting. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, Anika. I'm glad to be able to join the show today.
So please tell us about this news, knowing that you have a little bit of an embargo, but this episode will release after that news comes out.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So Tempesta Media, what we are is a content-led managed service solution for various B2B companies within the United States. So if you think about like an outsourced IT solution provider where you have someone maintaining your printers and your computers for your staff, what we do is our companies we work with, which are really mid-sized B2B companies, they outsource their digital marketing to us. And so we have a very comprehensive technology layer of solutions we've developed, an analytics layer, and then on top of that is the strategy and the program management that goes with it. And I'm actually pleased to announce that we were just named by the Content Marketing Association as having one of the most innovative content marketing or content management systems around, which is our Coreform technology platform. And then on top of that, we just got named as a finalist for the most innovative technology solution with our employee advocacy program that we have, which is a module within our Coreform platform.
Amazing.
It's a really exciting morning here today.
That is very exciting, and congratulations. I'm really excited to dig into this topic with you because one of the classes that I teach at USC is digital content creation and helping students create integrated strategies and plans. And I'm not sure everybody understands what all goes into content creation and digital solutions. So I'd love to take a step back and ask you, because I know that you've had roles at different agencies, you've been managing director, VP market development, consumer marketing before you started your own agency. So can you walk us through your background, what led you to content marketing as what you saw as maybe a hole in the market, your core competency, and what that looks like today?
Sure. That's actually really interesting. You know what they say, life is not exactly a straight path. You get there sometimes by a little bit of luck, some hard work, and then a little bit of serendipity that happens. And so prior to Tempesta Media, I was managing director of a subsidiary of Omnicom called Resolution Media. And Resolution Media was a I think they were one of the, at that time, top 3 largest SEO and paid search marketing companies in the United States. And managing various offices and a lot of very well-known Fortune 2000 brands. And all of them at that time were very much struggling with being able to create content. A lot of big corporations, really a lot of businesses at that time, were not structured to be able to create content on a daily or hourly basis as is required by social media as well as search engines. And so they had come from a world where collateral, which is what they viewed content at that time, you create that every quarter or every year or what have you. And that was the cycle, and you built everything up to do that. All of a sudden now there's this world where it's search engine marketing and you get showed up in social media, and they were saying, how do I create this content? And that would have been easy enough because at that time, what was emerging is what I call content mills, which were these marketplaces that matched up freelance, low-end freelance writers with customers that needed content. And it was really a commodity-based solution. The whole concept of trying to create content and not sacrifice your brand in the process, it's just something Fortune 2000 companies couldn't do. And so one of the things I was looking for is how do you plug that gap? How do you have industry expert level content that is worthy of these Fortune 2000 brands while at the same time being able to do content at scale? And nothing existed. I mean, we looked for months and months trying to find a solution out there, and there just wasn't anything that existed. You had, as I said, you had some of these freelancer marketplaces that did stuff. You had content mills They did a good job of trying to connect you with potential freelance writers. But as you know, Anika, there's a massive process that goes into a content marketing. You start off with developing a content strategy, and then you have your content plan, your editorial calendar. Great. Now I have an editorial calendar. Who's going to write all this stuff? Who's going to get it done? So now you got to go and find the right experts, either internally or externally within your organization. You have to have everything tied to brand guides and content guides. You have to make sure you manage the workflow, because in big companies, it's not one person approving the content. It's a whole chain of people that have to go and approve it. And if you're in a regulated industry, it's even worse, because now compliance has to come into effect. Then once the content's done, okay, who's going to format it? Who's going to publish it? Who's going to optimize it for SEO? Who's going to distribute it? Who's going to amplify it? These are major, major considerations, not just for Fortune 2000 companies, but also for your individual small mom and pop organization. Now, all those things may be collapsed down into 1, 2, or 3 people in a smaller company, but there are things that still have to be done nonetheless. And when I was going to try to find a solution to help a lot of our Fortune 2000 customers, it just didn't exist. And I said, you know what? This is a need that needs to be filled. And also, the whole world of digital marketing was changing at that time as well. If you go to before the Great Recession, as they called it, right? Before 2008,
yeah,
everything was about what I call push-based marketing. Jam the banner ads in your face, put an interstitial ad, roadblock this, see what I'm saying, right? This does not work well with people that are younger than Generation X.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want that. They want to go and actually find what they need. Right.
Yeah, I'm actually my students, they use TikTok as a search engine.
Oh, yeah.
So there's so many things.
And I fit in Generation X. So it's, I'm blaming myself on that one. But the point I'm getting at is they want to go pull what they want to get, when they want it, how they want it.
Yeah.
And I felt that when you combine the fact that companies need industry expert content with the fact that marketing's changing from push-based to what I call pull-based marketing, here's a great opportunity to go solve this problem. And that's really actually how Tempesta Media got started. And actually, the name Tempesta Media, I, of course, am Italian. Tempesta Media, or Tempesta, means a storm or a tempest or tornado. And I felt that this world of push-based marketing led by content marketing would be the future. And it would wipe away all the forms of marketing that really existed as they were at that time and usher in a new world. And it's actually really cool to see now, over a dozen years later, that's really happened.
Yeah.
And that's actually what got me here to where Tempesta Media is today.
Amazing. I love that you had the foresight to see what was going on, and working at another agency, you're able to see what holes you needed to plug, what was missing, and almost forecast and foreshadow, because I feel like now there are agencies popping up to help with content marketing, and there are some that have been around longer than others, but it is something. And, as you mentioned, you have to find the person or the people who are going to have the right tone of voice, follow your brand guidelines, make sure that your personality is coming through, and be able to create content for all of these different platforms that are out there, whether it's your website, your email newsletter, your social media. It's constant generation. And if you are a small business or a large business, it's hiring. It's hard you give up. And I think that is something that you've probably seen as well, right? Like, it's easy to say, you know what, I don't have time to post. I don't have time to write out my content calendar and think about this stuff. So I'm just not going to post for the next few weeks. But then that's not good for your brand reputation either.
Well, it's actually interesting you bring that up, Anika, because we've done research. What happens when you stop doing content marketing for a period of time? Well, and we were fortunate enough to be able to do this study. I think it was about 2 years ago. And we found that it's actually quite scary that if you stopped your content marketing program for a couple of months, not only did you lose the traction, and it happened in a delayed effect. So you'd stop your content marketing, and the first thing you see is, the first week or month or two after you've stopped, I'm still getting organic visitors coming to my site. It's still moving along. It's dropping a little bit, but still, for the most part, it's about steady. What happens then is once you get into like month 2, month 3 of not doing it, all of a sudden you start to see that decline, which was almost imperceptible to begin with. It starts to snowball. So much like when you're building a content marketing program up at the beginning, you don't see much traction initially, but over time it starts to build and build. That same thing was happening in reverse when you stopped the content marketing program. Wow. The biggest thing we found out, which was the most frightening about it, was when you resume. So let's say you stop for 3 or 6 months doing your content marketing. Many marketers assume, well, if I start up, those numbers are going to immediately go back up again. No, there was almost a 2-to-1 proportion based on the amount of time that you stopped for the amount of time it would take to resume, to get back to where you were. So let's say you would stop for 3 months. It would take your company at least 6 months to get back to the original level you were at before you stopped.
Oh.
And it was surreal when we saw the data and it correlated. And so to everyone that's out there that has a content marketing program or is really struggling with it, completely get it. I understand where you're coming from, but you've made a major investment with what you're doing. And while it may feel like a drudge going through those first months of the first year, and it seems sometimes to be a lower priority given all the other emergencies you're probably dealing with as a company, make the time, make the investment to be consistent. If you do this, it is going to become an annuity for your organization in terms of the amount of brand recognition, as Anika was talking about, but also in terms of lead flow, traffic, engagement, and other metrics that drive your bottom line for your company.
Interesting. That is a very scary statistic. And it makes me go, oh gosh, okay, what am I doing that I need to be doing more of? Or how do I carve time out as a small business? But on the other side, I also see that it's not just time, but it's also the content. One of the things that I'm doing right now is creating emails and blog posts and newsletter copy and social media copy for an online program on branding that I've created. I'm also taking blog posts, I'm turning podcast interviews for my CEO into blog posts, and I'm having to run it through multiple things. And I love writing, but it is also very time consuming. It takes away from other things that I should be doing to grow the business, right? So I think these are some of the things that I know I deal with at being involved in a small business and also having an entrepreneurial mindset. So I imagine this is exponentially worse for the clients that you have that are already the medium to large size clients.
Yeah, we typically deal with companies that have at least $5 million of revenue up to about $100 to $300 million of revenue. And the issues are actually very common no matter what the size of the company is. In that market of, as I said, between 5 million and 100 plus million, your marketing organization usually consists of like a VP of marketing or a CMO and maybe 1 or 2 other people, maybe 3. And they tend to be generalists. They're really experts on their company, but they're generalists when it comes to marketing because they don't know all these channels at the level of depth that you need to. Because it's not like it's 1995 here where it's like, you could be a digital marketing expert in 30 minutes, right? It is a very in-depth industry with lots of industry niches and marketing channels that just didn't exist, and they require a tremendous amount of focus. So what a lot of companies are doing, especially in the SMB space, is they're picking what is strategic and core to their business. So they narrow down what their marketing channels are, and they focus on that, and they outsource what is considered non-core as part of the overall process, and they keep internally what is going to be strategic. And so as you become a larger company, you actually outsource more and more of your overall content marketing program. And this is not my data. The actual Content Marketing Institute released some research. And forgive me for quoting because I may not be accurate on this from memory, but I think it was once you got into the larger end of the mid-market, you were at about 70+% of those companies were outsourcing some or all of their content marketing program to specialized providers. Same thing applies in other channels. For small businesses, it can be inundating to say, okay, I need to promote my organization. What do I do? There's all these different channels out there. Content marketing is one, paid search, there's a million of them. I'd like everyone to take a moment and think about a bullseye, a dartboard, if you will, with a bullseye in the middle. As you are at the bullseye, these are programs that are going to have your highest return on investment. Mm-hmm. They may not be the most scalable, but they're going to give you your highest return on investment. As you start going through each outer ring, as you go further and further out from the bullseye, you can get more scale with what you're doing and more volume, but your ROI is going to decline. So what I encourage small businesses to do is start with the bullseye. And at the bullseye, it really consists of 2 things: basic content marketing and SEO, which is search engine optimization. If you do those two things together as your foundation, you'll get the highest ROI for your marketing dollar spend. And then you can start expanding out from there and use that margin that you're getting from that bullseye-based channels to go into other channels. Logical channels that you can go into once you move beyond the bullseye will be things like email marketing, social media marketing, affiliate marketing. And then as you further go out, you start to get into things like paid search and video and podcasting and all the other things that go beyond that. But if you focus in on that first area and lock that in and get that to scale, then it opens up the doors to other areas. So as I said, I know it's very scary to try to do all these things at one time. Narrow your focus down to what's going to get you the return first, and then use that to fund your other areas of expansion.
Yeah. That was such a great answer. Thank you. And that was actually going to be my next question is what should be the primary areas of focus and what mistakes do you see companies make the most as they go into content marketing strategies? So I think you answered both of those questions. You might have a little more to elaborate on.
Sure. I think in terms of mistakes people make, we see this all the time. And try not to laugh, Anika, but these are real, honest God experiences that we've seen over the 100 plus customers that we've worked with. The first issue is what I call internitis, which is let me just go hire an intern to go in and do my content marketing program. And so they go and hire some of these college kids to be able to start writing content. They have neither the expertise nor the domain knowledge of either content marketing or the industry to be able to effectively create things. And so what ends up happening is that content gets created either by the intern or now lately AI, and they publish it, and then they scratch their head 3 or 4 months later and said, okay, I've just spent 3 or 4 months and I'm not seeing anything. What's going on here? So I think that's the first big mistake that I think almost every company goes through as a rite of passage when they start this. The next thing they say once they have that happen is, okay, I'll just have the executives each write an article every month. So this is comical because those executives, myself being one of them, am I going to sit there and spend 4 to 6 hours writing an article or blog for my website, or am I going to go close some large deal or restructure, do whatever I need to do to advance the business? Which is going to get me the ROI? And 99 times of 100, those executives are just not going to find the time to do it. And that program collapses and you end up in that world we talked about, which is, hey, nothing's been posted for 3 or 4 months. What do we do?
Yeah.
And then the third and final big one that I see is, hey, let's just go hire a freelancer to take care of this. So in that world, you spend a lot of time trying to find the right freelancer. Someone now has to manage that person. Someone's got to do quality control in terms of editing of the content that goes with it. Someone's going to check to make sure it's not getting plagiarized so you don't get sued, or worse yet, get de-indexed by the search engines, and a bunch of other things. And you need the software to be able to manage all that. Those are the 3 mistakes that I see most businesses make at some point in time in their journey when it comes to content marketing. Yeah. Or
all 3 at the same time. And thinking about some examples. But I think
that's like the triple crown of mistakes. Yeah.
Are you ready to take your brand to new heights? Join the Brand Amplifier for Entrepreneurs program. Learn how to build, elevate, and amplify your brand with a comprehensive 10-module course. Learn more about it and other ways to implement our strategies at fullcapacitymarketing.com. Click on EFCM Learning Hub for more information. Can't wait to help you amplify your brand.
I think that you mentioned something, which is another question I had. AI, right? Generative AI. How has that changed the landscape? I know as a professor, we're looking at how do you make sure that our students know how to use AI effectively. Again, it's like between working full-time, teaching, all that stuff, podcasting. I know I still have a lot to learn about different AI tools and how to use them properly, what kind of questions to ask. And you mentioned like doing quality control, people using AI too much and relying on that to write for them when it's not going to spit out something that is going to be really germane and it can be relevant, but it's not going to be specific, right, to that client.
That's absolutely correct. Full disclosure, we've been involved with AI for over 4 years now.
Amazing.
And so we have a very unique perspective on this, and combine the fact that our 27,000 industry experts have written over 80,000 articles over the dozen years we've been in business. Here's what I found. AI by itself, it's a much fancier version of what existed about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. And for those of you that are listening to this podcast that have been in marketing for a while, you'll be familiar with the concept of what we call PLR, private label rights articles, or article spinning. So back at that time, what those basically meant was you'd create an article and then you'd put it into software, and the software would go and find specific words and adjectives within the article itself and dynamically adjust them so that the article would be perceived as unique. Mm-hmm. And this is what was called article spinning. And people did this. It's called black hat, which means it's unethical and it's not a good thing to do. Companies would go and do this in order to game the search engines to show up search results. Eventually, Google's own technology and many others got smart enough to be able to identify this, and your site would end up getting banned altogether or de-indexed. The second one was what I call PLR, private label rights articles. So the article was written originally once by an industry expert and then sold many, many times to many different companies to put onto your site. So that you have, I have expert content on there. And that content also got banned because it was considered duplicate content. And so they being the search engine, would only attribute it to whoever the original writer was with it. Artificial intelligence, in my opinion, specifically generative AI, started off with what they call large learning or large language models, where they basically sucked up everything on the internet, various other data sources, and then used these really cool algorithms to be able to come up with a really advanced version of what I call that article spinning from 10 years ago. And so that was really what I'd call your version 1, your version 2 of a lot of the AI solutions that were out there. And they had their purpose, where if you were trying to basically create sports scores or summaries of baseball scores or whatever you're doing, where it's a pretty tight format of what you're creating, it's a very short piece of content, it had its uses. The problem was that type of content or that type of generative AI really couldn't replace actual real authors. Now you fast forward to ChatGPT 3.5 that recently, came out a while ago, and all of a sudden these things learned. They started getting a lot smarter. And so those AI solutions started to replace what I call search engine optimized content, or basically content that was created for the search engines and not for the reader, not for your target audience, not for your prospective buyer. In that example, ChatGPT 3.5, and in my opinion, the version 4, does a really good job of replacing that. But where everything starts to fall down is what I call the industry expertise.
Yeah.
And so we'll use an example. Anika here, who I'm talking with, is an absolute expert in her industry and is very well known. She has, through her experience, a body of knowledge that she has uniquely developed about the industry that she works in. So she's had personal experiences, insights, and viewpoints, opinions, and everything else that cannot be replaced by artificial intelligence. Where the opportunity exists is to use artificial intelligence to serve as a foundation for creating that content and then marrying it with the expertise, in this example, Anika, to be able to create something that's magical. And at Tempesta Media, we call that augmented expertise. So much like in the world of Star Trek, where you have the computer that can tell you all these bits of information, it takes someone that really knows that industry to be able to go and craft it and ask the right questions to get the right answers that come from AI to be able to create that content that really is going to resonate with the audience. And that's where I think you will see companies emerge in the next year that really will have solved that marriage between the two.
Whoa. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you on that. And I think that's the best use case if somebody is trying to create and deliver content themselves, right? Is using it as a tool to help, you input, you get the output, and then you add in your own expertise, you add in some additional resources, materials showing that you know what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think if you can do that, then you have something that is what's of value. I mean, at the end of the day, why is everyone creating content? It's really to go and drive interest, awareness, interest, education, and action with your target buyers. And whether that be pizza or plastic surgery or whatever, everything in between, it doesn't matter. It's the same concept. And if you go and create your content marketing program and your strategy with your target audience in mind, hey, whether it be generative AI using managed service solution providers like Tempesta Media or any other of a million other tools, you keep that as your center focus, you will have success. If you don't, and you let the tools drive your strategy, you will not have the success you're hoping for or the ROI.
Yeah. So speaking of, and this is something that maps back to our opener and to the way that you work, right? You have combined and also created your own tech stacks, correct? So
Yes,
it's your
absolutely.
proprietary AI, your proprietary systems that you use to make sure that you're delivering a product. There are so many tech stacks out there, mad tech, all the different things like the buzzwords and trying to look through thousands or hundreds of thousands of different things that are popping up every day. Can you talk about your differentiators without obviously giving away your secret sauce?
Sure.
And I know you said you primarily work with, 5 million and up companies, but if somebody is starting out, are there resources that they could look to Tempesta for?
Absolutely. So I guess probably talking about our technology that we've developed.
Yeah.
So we've invested millions of dollars and God knows how many hours across the team to be able to develop this. But what we have always felt from the beginning is that the technology should always be complementary and supportive of the human. Human creativity will never get replaced. And you need to be able to develop the tools and technologies that make them better, more productive. And so that's the mindset that we developed the CoreForm technology platform with. And so we are able to do things in there that automate a lot of the mundane processes of content marketing. So just something as simple as, okay, let me go and take this article and put it into HTML so I can add it into my website. It sounds like it's a 15-minute process. We automate it. Or, hey, can you optimize this article for SEO? So I don't have to sit there and make sure that it's got all the right pieces that go with it. We automate it. It's done. Can I schedule these 10 articles in advance so I don't have to sit and log into my WordPress or whatever I'm doing to go and set these things up? Yeah, we integrate with WordPress and HubSpot and others to do that. Can someone please just give me a dashboard of my KPIs of how I'm doing, regardless of whether it's social media or my blog or Google and all that? Yes, that's what we do. And then if I want to drill in right away to see what's the detail, I can do that. So what we've done is we've developed what started off as really a content workflow system, really turned into a really comprehensive content marketing solution that has about 30 different modules in it that handles everything from content marketing, social media marketing, employee advocacy, analytics, integrations, all of that. And so for a lot of companies where they struggle with, like you started the discussion with about MarTech and all the different tech stacks out there, honestly, most marketers are exhausted. They are tired. They do not want to go and learn another piece of technology. They don't want to go and have to integrate something and get IT involved or engineering. They just want to go and do their job.
Yeah.
And so the other component of what we've done is with our Tempesta Media Managed Service Solution, it's all done for you. All the integrations, all the analytics, the KPI setup, your content marketing, building your team, right? Who's going to be your writing team?
Yeah.
How do you audition them? How do you manage them? How do you pay them, right? All of it's done. And so with our customers, what they like is they literally can come to us and say, all right, here is my monthly budget. Here are the KPIs I'm trying to do, or here's what the things I'm measuring success with, which are key performance indicators or KPIs. Go do this. Report back, let me know what I need to do. All I want to do is just review and approve content and get my reports whenever I need them to see how it's doing. You deal with the integrations with all this. You deal with the writer recruitment and the team management and the editing and the workflow and the scheduling. You handle it all. And so we're able to do that with just a flat monthly subscription every month, much like you would have with your outsourced IT provider or network provider. It makes it very simple and easy for them to do it. For small businesses who don't have at least $5,000 a month as a starting budget, which is what we charge with, there are ways that you can do this. So a couple things that you can look at is in terms of content. The first is I think there are social media tools out there like Hootsuite and others where they will help you schedule and manage your social media posts that go out there across all your different networks. They typically, and you can go to their sites to find out, but most of those solutions are between $300 and $1,000 per month, which is reasonable for most small businesses to be able to do. On the content side, my suggestion is that start small. Start with a manageable objective. Literally start with one blog post a month. And whether it's done internally or through some of those things that become mistakes that we talked about before, just start with one. If you start with one per month and have the success with it and start building up a basic reputation, that will provide you the success that you can then make a more serious investment in content marketing to have success. A couple other tools, if you're using WordPress, I recommend Rank Math or Yoast, which are plugins that you can put into your WordPress that'll help you with the SEO optimization. You'll still have to do it manually, but it'll prompt you with what you should do and give you the parameters and translate what you want into the actual code that shows up behind those pages that people read on your website. So just to summarize, I'd use a social media scheduling tool like Hootsuite or some of the others. I would go and use SEO optimization plugins like Yoast or Rank Math. And then finally, set yourself up with a very realistic and conservative cadence of one per month. And literally get your team together around a pizza or the lunch and talk through it, record it. And that will give you the basis for that first article each month.
Fantastic. Thank you for providing such clear, actionable advice that anyone can use for their business.
We've all been there.
Yeah. What do you see next in this world of content creation, AI tools, people trying to figure out what really matters? I know you've talked about the simplicity and, starting in one place and then going out in the bullseye, but what do you see? Because I'm sure that you probably have a little more insight than most of us into what's next in the world of content marketing. Some people have told me video is more important for SEO and for content creation nowadays. Some people don't want to do video. So I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are getting hung up on the type of content versus stepping back and taking a look at the bigger picture. And I'm going to use the analogy of a grocery store because I think that's something everyone can relate to. When you go into a grocery store, and God forbid you go into the potato chip or snack food aisle, what you're presented with both sides of the aisle is an unbelievable assortment of various snack foods that you could have. You have potato chips, pretzels, and everything in between. Companies, food service manufacturers compete for that shelf space. And the idea is to get something at eye level and usually what they call the end caps, which is where the area are that you get right into it. Those are the premier positions that go with it. Content marketing, and more specifically, search engine optimization marketing, they're very much tied together at the hip. And if you step back and take a look at it, much like in the grocery industry, it's very hard for new companies to go and get shelf space. So if I have a new potato chip that I've rolled out, I think it's the best thing in the world. It's a real slog to go and get any type of shelf space in many grocery stores. The same thing is now happening in the world of content marketing. Many companies have invested years and years of time developing and building out their content, their site, and their distribution channels, their social media following. What this is starting to do is it is starting to create a massive barrier to entry for other companies into those specific niches in search and in content marketing. So if you're a new company and you're just getting started and your website consists of a handful of pages and maybe a handful of blog posts that you put in, you are competing now, you may be, depending on what your industry is, you're now competing with companies that may have thousands of pieces of content and tens of thousands of social media followers. The search engine algorithms, and I can't speak for them, but just my observations, what my team and I have seen, is that the number of search results, or called organic or natural search results, are slowly diminishing with the advance of mobile devices. So on desktop devices, you used to have 10 search engine results, and above them and below them, and it used to be on the side, you see paid advertisements. Now, when you look to mobile, and anyone that's on this, listening to this podcast, go and do a search on a commercial term on your mobile device, and what you're going to find is you'll still see a lot of those paid advertisements, but the number of organic results has been dropping. There may be 6 now before you see the next batch of paid results. So the shelf space is diminishing. The amount of content that's out there because of AI and people's recognition of content marketing is expanding geometrically. What this does is it creates a massive competitive situation, or what I call a diminishing resource. And so it's very important for your listeners, Anika, to be able to start making these investments now and not look at them as marketing programs, which is what we always used to look through in the lens of, but as assets of your corporation. If you have developed a very robust website with huge number of pages of content that have been indexed and are now showing up in search results, this is your sustainable competitive advantage over your competition. And it's an asset that can be leveraged to do other things. And so as companies are now planning 2024, instead of getting hung up on, should I do video or blogs or whatever, take a look at your competitive set, specifically within the search engines, and take a look at how you stack up against them from an asset to asset perspective, and determine what do you need to do to enhance the value of your asset, which is your site and your content, such that you can have a sustainable competitive advantage over them. Because we are getting to a point in time where I would say, whether it's 2024, most likely 2025, you're going to end up in a situation where it's going to be very hard for new entrants to penetrate that. And so now is the time to make those investments. And if you have to narrow down your marketing to focus, like I had mentioned about the bullseye, now's the time to do it for 2024, because once you're shut out of these spaces, you're not going to be able to get back into it.
Yikes.
And this is probably the biggest thing I think I hear from CEOs right now, which is, how do I go and create sustainable advantages for my business so that I'm not disrupted by the next big wave of technology that comes out?
Yeah.
This is one key area, and I would encourage your listeners to take advantage of it now and start planning for it accordingly.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I don't know whether to be optimistic or to feel downtrodden at that news.
Listen, everything goes through waves. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm old enough to have been through a couple of these waves. Everyone remember banner advertisements, right? That was a lot of fun. And then all of a sudden you saw that go away. And now there's another version of it that's video based that all of a sudden is starting to come out. The technology, and specifically the marketing technology industry, goes through these disruptive waves of innovations every 7 to 10 years. If you go back to the year 2000, there really wasn't any paid search as a channel that existed. Google pioneered that and really stole some of it from Overture, which was Yahoo's original property at that time. But then that served this gigantic wave of growth that really propelled it forward. And it came at the expense of traditional media, but it happened. Content marketing, and specifically the marriage of AI and industry expertise, that is now going to roll across this industry over the next year. So if you first recognize you have an asset and you need to build it, and then hey, let me go and invest in these channels to be able to make that happen, it could actually be, instead of being something negative, it could be a huge disruptive opportunity for your company.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you there's maybe about 5 to 10% of the companies in the US that are actively looking at it this way. So if you do this, you're actually going to be at the beginning of the next wave versus being, trying to catch up.
Fantastic. And I like your use of the word investment because it is an investment. Even with my podcast, I didn't start seeing the SEO results and start seeing other results of the work that I do with it. It's a labor of love. I had to be, number one, consistent with my content. So going back to you talking about being consistent, I had to go from, I'm just going to do a few episodes every once in a while to, no, I'm going to put at least one episode a week out and then, slowly build it from there. And that's when I really saw things start to work and get to the right audience and more people being able to absorb my content or wanting to get on the podcast or whatever the case might be. So I've seen this in action with clients as well, but I think people need to remember it's a long game. So you have to start somewhere and no better day to start than today. If you haven't already.
And absolutely, Anika, to what you're saying, let me just use a very quick 10-second analogy for your audience. When you run let's say a banner ad campaign or an ad in a magazine, once that issue goes out or once that ad is served up, the opportunity for you to get revenue from it diminishes greatly after 72 hours or a week or whatever the time period is. With content, the inverse is true. Because it's considered an evergreen asset, it is something that is going to generate visitors and ads and revenue and so forth for your company for years, depending on the type of content that goes with it. We have articles that are from, 2016 that are still consistently generating 100, 200 visitors a month.
Yeah.
What's the ROI on that for an article that's 7 years old, right?
Amazing. That's fantastic. Another question that I have for you is looking at the state of first party versus third party data, all the talk about privacy considerations. And, we have them there's obviously GDPR. Every state by state some have privacy, some don't. China has a policy. We're seeing that this is going to become something, third party cookies, right? It's taking a while, but now I think it's next year that Google said they're going to go away. So how does that play into content strategy?
I think that's really interesting that you bring that up, Anika, because I think the world has come full circle. Back 20 years ago, when I was with a company that later went public, it was one of the first web analytic companies. I think you might have known them as Visual Sciences or Website Story, eventually got bought by Omniture and then bought by Adobe. We helped develop the first third-party cookie tracking capability at that time. And this is, now it's 23 years ago. And and looking back at it, the whole point of what we're trying to accomplish at that time was to have anonymized tracking data so that you can better serve advertisements and experiences to the target audience. That need to be able to have a personalized experience for the audience hasn't gone away. What's going away and what's changed is that the underlying technology has become much more advanced. I mean, the power on my mobile phone is more than probably a dozen computers that I had, 20 years ago. There's just more things you can do. It's a much more immersive, richer environment, and bandwidth has expanded dramatically. So from a content marketing perspective, the tracking itself, yes, I think everyone's going to have to go through a little bit of a period of adoption in terms of what they can and can't report on. But at the end of the day, what it's going to come down to is, can you measure the number of people that are coming to your content? Can you measure what's the engagement with them? And then can you measure what happens as a result of that content?
Yeah.
I think those things, regardless of what happens with privacy controls and anonymized data and different types of cookies, that's still going to exist. And because that is still going to exist, content marketing is going to continue to flourish.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And anything else that you want to share? I think we've gone over so much great stuff. My mind is reeling and I'm thinking about a lot of things that I want to look at for my own endeavors and also things I want to share with other people. But is there any one last word of wisdom that you would give to anyone listening right now?
Sure. I think for all of us that are marketers, that have our own businesses, that are listening to this podcast, we've all been through a lot the last couple of years, whether it be recession, COVID, supply chain shortages, you name it. We've built up resiliency as marketers. We have gotten much better and much more efficient at what we do. And while there are more changes that are continuing to happen, whether it be relating to cookie tracking or the types of media or so forth, I think those marketers that are still marketing today and business owners that are still in existence today, you have developed a resiliency that is a critical skill. And you shouldn't diminish it. I think you should embrace that on that end and look to the next years of how do you use that resiliency to move forward. As long as you keep making progress every day with what you're doing, whether it be marketing or not marketing related, you're going to have success. No business is built overnight. No marketing program achieves instant success overnight. All about optimization, testing, and iteration, and keeping moving forward. So looking into 2024, as long as you leverage your resiliency and you keep moving forward, you will have tremendous success regardless of what marketing vehicles exist by the end of next year.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. Michael, do you have a favorite quote, mantra, words of wisdom that you live by that help keep you motivated?
I think it's more of a joke on that end, but everyone's familiar with Murphy's Law, where whatever can go wrong will go wrong. There's also something that we used to joke about many years ago called Moore's Law, which means you can't fall off the floor. And the analogy behind that is, depending on how you look at things, things can always be better. You can always move forward, and you have always a starting point or a base at which to start from.
Fantastic. This has been such a great, insightful episode. I really appreciate your time. We'll have Tempesta Media linked in the show notes, and that is the best place for people to find you and follow you and learn about your services, correct?
Absolutely. And Anika, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Great. Thank you. And I know that I got a lot of value out of this. I know that my audience is going to get a lot of value out of this episode when it releases. I can't thank you enough for your time and expertise. And congratulations again on your recent accolades. Can't wait to hear what happens next for Tempesta Media and for Michael Marchese. With that, I'm Anika Jackson. I'll be back again in a few days with another amazing expert to help you make your business better.
Want more? Check out amplifywithanika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithanika.